never thought betrayal would smell like Tuesday's lasagna, still warm in the oven when my world imploded. My name is Cedric Morrisons, and I'm 38 years old. I spend my days now maintaining routines for 3 children who deserve better than broken promises. Standing in our kitchen, Loris told me she was leaving us for Trent Marshall as casually as she might mention needing milk. My daughter Maddie froze at the table, while Charlie and Sophie, too young to understand, continued coloring. My friend Luke Patel found me later in the garage, tracing oil stains with my shoe until the shaking stopped. I'd built our life on consistency. Family dinners, bedtime stories, weekend pancakes. Now I had to rebuild it on truth and consequences. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. The lasagna sat untouched as Larice dropped her fork against the ceramic plate. "I need more than this," she announced, her voice carrying the finality of a decision already made. My hand tightened around my own fork. The kids stopped eating, sensing the tension crackling across our dinner table. Maddie, always perceptive at 12, watched with wide eyes. Charlie fidgeted with his napkin while Sophie, barely 4, pushed her food around without looking up. "You mean them?" I kept my voice steady, though my chest constricted. The familiar scent of garlic bread turned sour in my nose, reminding me of countless family dinners that suddenly felt like lies. "I mean me." Larice's lip curled slightly. "Trent sees me. He understands what I need." The mention of his name made my jaw clench. I'd noticed her coming home later from yoga, wearing perfume I didn't recognize. But hearing her say it out loud in front of our children, that was different. "Our children need you," I said quietly, conscious of 3 sets of ears hanging on every word. "They need stability." "You'll manage," she replied, pushing back from the table. The legs of her chair scraped against the floor, making Sophie jump. "You always do." She stood, already reaching for her keys on the counter. The same keys that hung next to the family calendar I'd filled out just that morning, planning our weekend together. "Then I'll manage." The words came out level, masking the acid burning in my gut. I remembered the way my father had lost control when my mother left, how his rage had scarred us all. I wouldn't do that to my kids. Larice paused at the door, perhaps expecting more of a fight. When I remained silent, she walked out. The sound of her car starting felt like a punctuation mark on 13 years of marriage. "Daddy?" Sophie's small voice broke the silence. "Is Mommy coming back for bedtime?" I swallowed hard. "Not tonight, sweetheart. But I'll read you 2 stories instead of 1, okay?" After tucking them in, Maddie last, with a longer hug because I saw the understanding in her eyes, I retreated to the garage. The familiar smell of motor oil and sawdust surrounded me as I pulled out my phone. Luke answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" Larice left, for another man. My voice cracked slightly. "She just walked out during dinner." Jesus said. Luke's calm tone steadied me. "Listen carefully. First thing tomorrow, we're filing for emergency temporary custody. Tonight you need to freeze any joint accounts and start documenting everything. Times, dates, what she said in front of the kids. Get a notebook and write it all down while it's fresh." I pressed my palm against the workbench, anchoring myself. "The kids, Luke." "How do I—" "One step at a time," he cut in. "You protect them by thinking clearly. No emotional decisions. We build a wall of facts and documentation that no judge can ignore." Later, lying in bed, I stared at her empty pillow. The cotton case still held traces of her shampoo, but the scent seemed foreign now, tainted by deception. How long had she been planning this? How many nights had she laid here, plotting her escape while I slept beside her, trusting and oblivious? The morning after Larice left, I met Luke at the courthouse steps. The granite felt cold and permanent under my feet, like the weight settling in my chest. Luke carried his leather briefcase, the one I'd helped him pick out last Christmas, back when life made sense. "You look like hell," he said, straightening my tie. "But that works in our favor, shows the strain of single parenting." I'd dropped the kids at school an hour earlier, making sure their lunches were packed and homework folders signed. Charlie had asked twice if Mommy would pick them up. I'd promise them consistency even if I couldn't promise her return. "I've got the petition ready," Luke continued as we walked through security. "Emergency custody hearing should happen within days. Judge Martinez is on rotation. She's fair, focuses on stability." The courthouse corridors echoed with our footsteps. Other people's dramas played out in whispers against marble walls, but I kept my eyes forward. "Focus on the next right thing," I reminded myself. In the clerk's office, I watched Luke submit our paperwork. My signature looked strange on the forms, like someone else had written it. The clerk stamped each page with mechanical precision while I thought about Sophie's stuffed giraffe left at daycare, and whether Charlie would remember his inhaler for recess. "Now we wait," Luke said as we left. "Go home. Be with your kids. I'll call the second I hear anything." The call came exactly 6 days later, while I was helping Maddie with her science project. Glue and construction paper covered the kitchen table as she built a model solar system. "Martinez granted it," Luke's voice crackled through my phone. "Full emergency temporary custody. Larice gets supervised visitation only until the formal hearing." I steadied myself against the counter, relief flooding through me like a physical force. "The kids stay with me?" "They stay with you, buddy. You're their anchor now. Officially." After hanging up, I hugged Maddie tight, probably confusing her. But I needed to hold on to something solid, something that made sense. My children would keep their home, their schools, their routines. One battle won. That night, after bedtime stories and triple-checking locked doors, I opened my laptop. Time to face the financial damage. I'd been avoiding this part, focusing on the kids' immediate needs. But Luke's words about documentation echoed in my head. The first few bank statements looked normal. Then I saw it. 3 transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Large ones. I dug deeper, following the money trail. A lease agreement popped up, dated 2 months ago in a complex near Trent's office. My throat tightened as I scrolled through more documents. Credit card applications, in my name. The screen blurred as I found application after application. She'd used our joint information to open lines of credit I never knew existed. The amounts made my hands shake, thousands in debt, all tied to my name and credit score. I hit print, listening to the machine spit out page after damning page. Each sheet represented another crack in the foundation I'd built for our family. The stack grew higher. Transfer records, lease agreements, credit lines. A paper trail of betrayal that threatened everything I'd worked to provide for Maddie, Charlie, and Sophie. My fingers traced the amounts as I organized the evidence. The numbers seemed to pulse on the page, each one a potential landmine in our future. How could I protect 3 young lives when their mother had rigged the ground beneath us to explode? I built our new life like a fortress, one brick of routine at a time. The kitchen calendar became our battle plan, covered in different colored markers. Blue for school events, green for appointments, red for court dates. Every morning I'd wake before dawn to review the day's operations while the coffee maker hummed its familiar song. "Daddy, I did my bed," Sophie would announce, her pride lighting up the kitchen as she marked her chart with a wobbly star sticker. The charts gave them structure, something solid to hold on to while their world shifted. "Great job, sweetheart," I'd say, checking off another box in my own binder, the one Luke insisted I keep. Every receipt, every schedule change, every moment documented. The weight of paper proof growing heavier each day. Charlie took longer to adjust. He'd sit at breakfast pushing cereals around his bowl, eyes fixed on the empty chair where Larice used to sit. "When's Mom coming?" he'd ask some mornings, his voice small against the kitchen's warmth. "Focus on your breakfast, buddy," I'd redirect gently. "Remember, we've got your spelling test today." Luke had coached me on this. Keep them anchored in the present, in what they could control. Maddie, being oldest, carried the heaviest burden. I'd catch her mothering her siblings, trying to fill gaps that weren't hers to fill. "Let me help with lunches," she'd insist, but I'd guide her back to just being 11. "Your job is to be Maddie," I'd remind her. "I've got this." And slowly I did. The morning rush became a dance we knew by heart. Backpacks by the door, shoes lined up like soldiers, permission slips signed and tucked away. After school, we'd hit the park, rain or shine. That's where I first heard it. Maddie's laugh, real and unguarded, as she chased Sophie down the slide. The sound cut through months of careful coping, straight to hope. Every night, after tucking them in, I'd meet with Luke via video chat. He'd review my documentation, prep me for mediation, remind me to breathe. "You're doing everything right," he'd say, his voice steady through the screen. "Keep building your case. The routine is your shield." For the first time since that night in the kitchen, I felt something close to calm. Not happiness. That was still too far, but a kind of peace in the precision of our days. The binder grew thicker with evidence of stability, teacher notes praising the kids' adjustment, counseling reports showing progress, bank statements proving responsible management. Then came the text that cracked our careful routine. "Need to meet, just to talk. The diner on 4th tomorrow night. Lorice." My hands didn't shake as I read it, and that felt like victory enough. I called Luke immediately. "She's planning something," he warned. "But go. Document everything." Standing outside the diner the next evening, I caught my reflection in the glass door. The man staring back looked tired but steady, like weathered oak. I thought of the 3 sleeping children I'd left with my sister, of the fortress I'd built around them, of the binder at home filled with proof of our survival. The fluorescent open sign buzzed above me, casting intermittent red light across my face. Through the window, I could see Lorice already seated, checking her phone. My watch read 7:58 p.m. I was exactly on time. She was early, which meant she wanted something. I took one more breath, hand on the door handle, and steeled myself for whatever came next. The bell chimed as I pushed through the diner's door. The late evening crowd was thin, just a few truckers hunched over coffee and a waitress refilling sugar dispensers. No Lorice. I chose a booth with clear sight lines to both exits, another habit Luke had drilled into me. 15 minutes ticked by before the door swung open again. Lorice swept in, trailing expensive perfume, the kind that announces itself before its wearer. My throat tightened at the familiar scent, remembering how it used to linger on our pillowcases after date nights. "Sorry I'm late," she murmured, sliding into the booth. Traffic was terrible. The same excuse she'd used countless times during our marriage. I noticed her designer purse, the fresh manicure, all signals that Trent was keeping her comfortable. "You wanted to meet," I said, keeping my voice neutral. The waitress approached, but I waved her off. Lorice leaned forward, her fingers inches from mine on the laminate table. "I've been thinking, Cedric. About us, about everything." Her voice dropped to that soft tone she'd always used when wanting something. "We could just start over. Put this behind us." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I reached into my messenger bag and withdrew a manila folder. One by one, I laid out the documents Luke had helped me compile. Bank statements showing transfers to an account I'd never known about. A lease agreement for an apartment near Trent's place dated months before she left. Text messages between them discussing how to keep their names off things. "What's all this?" Her charm evaporated like morning dew. "Evidence," I said simply, "of choices. You're going through my private things?" Color rose in her cheeks. "This is exactly why I left. You're controlling, suffocating. You drove me to this." "No." I kept my voice steady, though my pulse hammered. "Choices have owners." She blinked rapidly, recalculating. I recognized the expression. I'd seen it countless times when she'd been caught in a lie during our marriage. But instead of the tearful apologies of the past, her face hardened. "You think you're so righteous," she spat, gathering her purse. "So perfect. Well, enjoy your evidence. I'm done here." The bell rang again as she stormed out, leaving behind only the ghost of that perfume and an untouched glass of water. Through the window, I watched her climb into her new car, probably another gift from Trent, and speed away. The drive home felt longer than usual. Something in Lorice's reaction nagged at me. The designer accessories and polished appearance didn't quite match her desperate attempt to start over. Was her confident facade cracking? My sister's car was still in the driveway when I pulled up. Inside, I found Maddie sitting on the stairs in her pajamas, clearly waiting up. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked, settling beside her. "Dad?" Her voice wavered. "You'll always be here for us, right? You won't leave?" The question hit like a physical blow. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, feeling how small she still was, how much she needed stability. Always, I promised, my voice firm despite the pressure building in my chest. That's not even a question. After tucking her back in, I walked my sister out and stood in the entryway. The blue door, the one I'd repainted with the kids last weekend, stood solid before me. I turned the deadbolt with deliberate force, each click a quiet vow that this barrier between our peace and chaos would never be carelessly breached again. Routine became our armor in those weeks after the diner confrontation. Every morning I'd check off the same boxes. Breakfast served, lunches packed, backpacks ready. The kids were settling into the rhythm, Maddie helping Sophie with her shoes, Charlie remembering his library books without prompting. We were finding our feet again. Then Luke called on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing homework at the kitchen table. "You need to see this," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Check your email." I opened the link he'd sent, a news article about Marshall Financial Group. My coffee went cold as I read through it. Trent Marshall, senior portfolio manager, terminated effective immediately. Internal audit revealed systematic embezzlement. Criminal investigation pending. "How bad?" I asked Luke. "7 figures bad," he replied. "And that's just what they've found so far." The familiar scent of chalk dust and graphite from the kids' homework suddenly grounded me. I remembered all those designer clothes Larice had been wearing, the new car, the expensive perfume. Blood money, all of it. "There's more," Luke continued. "My contact at the courthouse says he got picked up for DUI last night. License suspended. Pending court date." I rubbed my temples. "Perfect judgment, as always." "Cedric." Luke's tone turned serious. "This changes things. When people like Trent fall, they fall hard. And they usually drag everyone down with them." He was right. Within days, more details emerged. Trent's assets were frozen, his fancy downtown apartment seized. His reputation, the thing he'd valued most, was in tatters. The man who'd stolen my wife was watching his own life crumble like a house of cards. I noticed the shift in Larice's behavior almost immediately. The demanding texts about schedule changes stopped. Her usual complaints about child support went quiet. Even during the brief handoffs for her supervised visits, she seemed distracted, her designer clothes replaced by department store brands. Then came the whispers through our old social circle. Trent had vanished. No goodbye, no forwarding address, just gone, leaving Larice stranded in the wreckage of their affair. "Classic pattern," Luke said over coffee one morning. "Guy like that, when the money's gone, he moves on to the next mark." I thought of Larice, who'd thrown away our family for Trent's false promises. She made her choice. "True," Luke nodded, "but desperate people do desperate things. Watch your back." That warning echoed in my mind as I went about our evening routine. The kids were asleep upstairs, their room still carrying the sweet smell of the banana bread we'd baked together. I sat at my desk sorting through bills and permission slips when it happened. A knock rattled the blue door, sharp, insistent. My heart jumped into my throat. It was nearly midnight. No one in their right mind would come calling this late. Through the window, I caught the faint scent of that familiar perfume. Another knock, harder this time, made the door frame shudder. My hand trembled slightly as I opened the door. Larice stood there, mascara running down her cheeks. Her designer clothes replaced by a wrinkled blouse and jeans. The perfume that once marked her confidence now seemed desperate, too strong for the midnight air. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I need to talk to you." I kept my grip firm on the doorframe, blocking the entrance. Above us, 3 children slept peacefully, unaware of this midnight drama. I wouldn't let their stability be threatened again. "It's late, Larice. Trent's gone." Her words tumbled out between sobs. "He just left. Cleaned out our account, took everything. I was so stupid, Cedric. I threw away everything we built for." She pressed her hands to her face. "I want to come home. I want our family back." The familiar ache in my chest flared. I remembered countless dinners, bedtime stories, weekend trips to the park, all those moments she'd walked away from without a backward glance. "The kids need their mother," she continued, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. We can start over. Please. You always said family comes first. Family did come first, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside. That's why I'm still here. Her expression shifted then, tears giving way to something harder. If you don't let me come back, I'll take them. The threat hung between us like poison. I'll go to court tomorrow. You can't keep my children from me forever. I thought of the binder in my office, filled with documented absences, missed visits, financial records, the custody agreement that had taken months to secure, the stability we'd rebuilt from the ashes of her betrayal. The court already decided, I said. Supervised visits until you complete counseling. That hasn't changed. I'm their mother. Her voice rose sharply, and I glanced anxiously toward the upstairs windows. You're trying to alienate them from me. The judge will see that. The accusation stung, but I held my ground. How many nights had I sat with Maddie while she cried for her mom? How often had I encouraged Charlie to share his art projects during visits? How carefully had I protected Sophie's innocent trust that everyone she loved would return? Good night, Larice. I started to close the door. Wait. She jammed her foot in the gap. You can't just... We'll talk through our lawyers. I gently but firmly moved her foot back. That's all I can offer right now. The blue door clicked shut, muffling her protests. I stood there, forehead pressed against the cool paint, listening as her heels clicked down the walkway. Her car engine started, faded away. The house felt impossibly quiet. I paced the living room, my thoughts racing between rage at her audacity and fear of another custody battle. The kids had only recently started sleeping through the night again. Maddie's nightmares about abandonment had finally subsided. Charlie had stopped asking when Mom would come home for good. Hours crawled by. I watched dawn creep across the carpet, painting everything in shades of gray and blue. My gaze drifted to the family court order framed beside the children's artwork. Only the law could protect us now. Cold comfort as morning approached, but the only certainty I had left. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of my closet mirror, straightening a tie I'd knotted a dozen times already. My hands wouldn't stay still. The house was quiet. I dropped the kids at school early, promising to pick them up myself, no matter what happened in court. Ready? Luke's voice came from the doorway. He held up a leather briefcase stuffed with documents we'd spent weeks organizing. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. As I'll ever be. The drive to the courthouse brought back memories of morning commutes with Larice, back when we carpooled to save money for the down payment on our house. The radio had always played soft rock, and she'd hum along while checking her makeup. I pushed the memory aside as Luke parked. Remember, he said, let the evidence speak. She'll try to make this emotional. Inside the courtroom, our footsteps echoed on polished floors. I took my seat beside Luke, watching Larice sweep in with her lawyer. She wore a conservative blue dress, her makeup perfect again, playing the part of the concerned mother. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Harrison entered, his expression neutral as he reviewed the initial papers. We're here regarding custody modification for the Morrisons' children. Mrs. Morrisons, you're petitioning for joint custody and increased visitation? Yes, Your Honor. Larice's voice quavered. I've made mistakes, but I'm their mother. He's keeping them from me. I clenched my jaw, but Luke's hand touched my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. Your Honor, Luke stood. We have documentation that tells a different story. He approached with our first exhibit, a calendar marking every scheduled visit since the separation. Red X's covered most dates. Mrs. Morrison's missed 17 of 24 supervised visits in the past 6 months. Larice's lawyer objected, claiming circumstances beyond her control. Judge Harrison overruled him. Furthermore, Luke continued, producing a letter, we have a statement from Mrs. Chen, the children's teacher. I remembered Mrs. Chen's concerned face as she'd written that note, describing how Larice had missed 3 scheduled pickups, leaving Charlie waiting alone at school. How Sophie had cried during the one pickup Larice managed, begging to go home with me instead. He's poisoning them against me, Larice burst out, tears streaming. The children need their mother. You're destroying their lives. Mrs. Morrison's, Judge Harrison warned, control yourself. Luke methodically laid out more evidence. Bank statements showing the financial manipulation, text messages planning the hidden lease with Trent, proof that she'd known about his embezzlement before it became public. Your Honor, Larissa's lawyer attempted, my client has acknowledged past errors in judgment. But surely the children's best interest is precisely why we're here, Luke interjected. He produced our final exhibit, a thick folder of school records, medical appointments, and counseling notes. Mr. Morrison's has maintained absolute stability for these children through everything. Their grades have improved. Their anxiety symptoms have decreased. The court-appointed counselor confirms they're thriving under the current arrangement. Judge Harrison studied each document carefully, while Larisse dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The courtroom fell silent except for the shuffle of papers and the soft whir of the air conditioning. I thought of Maddie's smile returning during our weekend pancake breakfasts, of Charlie's proud grin when we finished his science project, of Sophie finally sleeping through the night in her own bed. The judge set down the last page and cleared his throat. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Having reviewed all evidence, he began, I'm prepared to rule. Judge Harrison's voice filled the courtroom with unwavering certainty. This court finds overwhelming evidence that the children's best interests are served by maintaining their current stable environment. Therefore, I am awarding sole legal and physical custody to Mr. Morrison's. My chest loosened for the first time in months. Luke's hand found my shoulder, steady and reassuring. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the documented pattern of missed visitations and financial misconduct, Mrs. Morrison's petition for spousal support is denied. Her visitation will remain supervised and will require completion of court-mandated counseling before any modification can be considered. Larissa's sharp intake of breath cut through the air. From the corner of my eye, I saw her mascara starting to run. Finally, Judge Harrison said, consulting his notes, having reviewed the dissolution paperwork, I find grounds to grant the divorce. It will be entered into record today. He looked directly at me. Mr. Morrison's, the court commends your dedication to your children's welfare during this difficult transition. Thank you, Your Honor. I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. The gavel struck with finality. As we gathered our papers, Larissa's lawyer hurried her toward the door, but she turned back once. Cedric, she started, her voice breaking. I met her gaze, seeing not the woman who'd betrayed us, but the mother of my children, someone who'd lost everything chasing a fantasy with Trent Marshall. The man himself was nowhere to be seen, having abandoned her just as thoroughly as she'd once abandoned us. I hope you find peace, I said quietly, meaning it despite everything. She fled the courtroom, heels clicking against marble, leaving behind only the ghost of her perfume and the echo of what we'd once been. Luke helped me organize the papers, sliding the custody order into a protective sleeve. You did it, he said simply. Walking out of the courthouse, I held that order like a talisman. The sun felt warmer somehow, the air clearer. But the victory wasn't complete, wouldn't be until I could gather Maddie, Charlie, and Sophie in my arms and tell them they were safe. Need a ride? Luke offered, but I shook my head. Think I'll walk a bit first. Clear my head. Call if you need anything, he said, then added with a slight smile. Counselor's orders. I walked several blocks, letting the weight of everything settle. The city moved around me, people rushing to lunch meetings, construction crews repairing sidewalks, life continuing as it always did. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. The children had a good morning. They're excited to see you. Finally, I turned toward home. The blue door I'd repainted with the kids stood out against the white siding, a symbol of everything we'd rebuilt together. My hand was steady as I fitted the key into the lock, knowing that beyond this threshold waited 3 faces that made every moment of the fight worthwhile. Back at home, the weight of the court order felt different in my hands, lighter somehow, like truth finally carved into stone. I stood in my office measuring the perfect spot on the wall above my desk. The frame was simple wood, nothing fancy, but it didn't need to be. What mattered was what it represented. As I hung it, my eyes drifted to the 3 crayon drawings already displayed beside where the order would go. Maddie's house had a chimney with exuberant swirls of smoke. Charlie had drawn our blue door with careful precision, though the proportions made it nearly as big as the house itself. and Sophie, still mastering her colors, had filled her sky with every shade in her crayon box. The sound of their laughter drifted up from the backyard where Mrs. Chen was watching them. I remembered the day they'd made these pictures, hunched over the kitchen table while I made mac and cheese, their comfort food for hard days. Draw our home, I'd suggested, needing to see it through their eyes. What they'd created was better than any architectural blueprint, pure hope rendered in Crayola. I stepped back, studying the arrangement. The court order and children's artwork complemented each other perfectly, one document protecting the dreams illustrated in the others. My throat tightened as I traced the judge's signature with my finger. We'd won. Really won. Not just custody, but everything. The house clear of Loris's financial entanglements, the children's stability secured, our future unshackled from her schemes. The evening air called to me. I walked onto the porch, watching the setting sun paint our blue door in deeper shades. The same door I'd repainted with 3 eager helpers, Charlie insisting on holding the brush himself for at least one stroke. Now it glowed like a beacon in the dusk, marking the boundary between our protected world and everything else. These days mornings rang with the chaos of cereal bowls and backpack checks. Bills lined up neatly in my inbox, each one paid without the gnawing fear of hidden debts. Loris existed only in the margins now, drifting between temporary apartments, showing up for her supervised visits with makeup too perfect and stories too practiced. The children returned from these visits quieter, but they bounced back faster each time, their resilience growing like summer grass. Every Sunday, Luke's truck would rumble into the driveway. He'd arrive with coffee and his toolbox ready to tackle whatever needed fixing. We'd work side by side, tightening loose hinges or patching drywall, the simple meditation of home maintenance. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't need to. He understood that healing, like home repair, happened one small fix at a time. That night, I made my usual rounds, checking on each sleeping child. Maddie curled around her favorite book, Charlie's star nightlight casting gentle shadows, Sophie's thumb tucked trustingly near her mouth. Standing in the hallway between their rooms, I whispered the truth I'd learned the hard way, the wisdom earned through every step of our journey. Love protects by telling the truth and setting boundaries. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.